Hey everybody, what's going on? Now that the trade deadline has passed for the Montreal Canadiens and the rest of the NHL, it's time to start looking at a deeper dive into what the Montreal Canadiens should look like in the future. And in today's video, we're going to discuss who could potentially be a fit on that Montreal Canadiens top line of the future, which also includes Cole Caufield and Nick Suzuki. When you're looking at the current Montreal Canadiens team, the first thing you have to look at now for potential solutions on this top line is wondering if the Canadiens currently have that solution in-house right now. The Habs have played Josh Anderson on that top line, but it kind of went a bit stale of late, and they've since moved him off that top line as Anderson's in a bit of a slump of late as well. But I really don't think the Canadiens currently have anyone in the system that truly fits what they should be looking for on that top line right now. You can look at guys like Anderson, and in theory, he should be a very good fit for that line because he's a big body. He creates space with his speed and does a lot of little things really well. But if you look at other players, whether it's Jesse Ylonen, Emil Heineman, Ty Smilanic, there's a lot of different players in the Montreal Canadiens system right now that could potentially fit in that top line, whether it's Emil Heineman as well. There's a lot of guys that you can say, in theory, this player could fit well on that top line, but I'm not exactly sure that the Canadiens currently have the answer right now in-house, and they ultimately might have to go shopping in free agency or in terms of the upcoming NHL draft. Now, if you decide the Montreal Canadiens would be wise to take a center or a defenseman as their top selection in the upcoming NHL draft, where they are assuredly going to pick in that top 5 or 6 picks, you might want to look in free agency, and there are some names that could make some sense in the short term and long term for this Montreal Canadiens team. Of course, there are some big names on that list, whether it's Philip Forsberg or Johnny Gaudreau, but personally, I would avoid those big names as of now. I don't believe that those contracts are going to turn out well for whoever bids on them, not like they ever do in free agency, but I think the Montreal Canadiens would be wise to stay away from Philip Forsberg, who is currently shooting a career high 22% right now, and he's just around a 55, 60 point player. Sure, he could be in theory a fit for that top line, but I just don't see the value in paying a winger like that $8.5 or $9 million per season. Where the Montreal Canadiens might be wiser in terms of their shopping could be with a guy like Andre Burakovsky or Valeri Nichushkin, both players for the Colorado Avalanche right now. These are players that are having big seasons for the Avalanche, and of course the Avalanche are a powerhouse right now in the Western Conference, and that could inflate some of their numbers, but these are both big bodies, and I really do believe they would be interested in playing for the Montreal Canadiens if you have two skilled players like Cole Caufield and Nick Suzuki up front on that line. It really just ultimately depends on if those type of players want to come to Montreal, and it depends on how long of a contract you're willing to offer those players, because typically you're going to see players get overpaid in terms of their average annual value, along with the years that you ultimately give them in free agency. And the Montreal Canadiens would be wise, unlike under Marc Bergevin, where they don't give out those long-term contracts like they're currently stuck with Brendan Gallagher, Jeff Petrie, those type of players. And I think the Montreal Canadiens should continue down that road of trying to get those 2 to 3 year bridge gap players right now to see if they would be a fit for this team moving forward in the long term. And I think players like Nichushkin and Burakovsky would be wise additions for this Montreal Canadiens team. Now, the other route the Habs could choose to go down, depending on where they pick in that top 5 of the upcoming NHL draft, could be to choose that big winger out of Slovakia, Yuri Slafkovský, who has proven to be one of the biggest risers in this NHL draft class. This is a big powerhouse, power forward winger that could really ultimately make that difference on that top line with Caufield and Suzuki, and he's someone that you would have under team control for a very long time. So depending whether or not the Montreal Canadiens decide to go center or defenseman with that pick, well, it ultimately depends on where that selection is, because if they pick first overall, you know they're likely going to be selecting Shane Wright from the Kingston Frontenacs. And I think the wise decision here would be, depending on if they do fall backwards in the draft, could be to take Slafkovský and hope that he develops into that long-term fixture playing on that top line with Caufield and Suzuki. That's it for me today from Cook's Corner. As always, let me know in the comment section down below who you think would be the perfect fit for Caufield and Suzuki on that top line. If you think that person is in-house, or you think the Canadiens should go shopping in free agency or the upcoming NHL draft. I'm Zach Cook. We'll see you later.